Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's Wendy from Family in Focus, and we're going to dive right on in. Um, I love experiments. Anyone who has worked with me in the office, in Family in Focus, in the coaching community, any kind of situation, even speed coaching at the local health fairs, okay? Anyone who has heard me talk has we've talked about experiments and my love of little experiments. And today is actually about how I screwed it up. Okay. I I screwed up the whole concept of little experiments. So let's back up a little bit. So experiments are just little trials, little tests. Maybe it's where you try something new and you see what the result is going to be. Maybe you have a hypothesis or a guess of what will happen, but ultimately you don't know until you try. And I'd venture to say, to guess, that we never exactly know what the outcome will be of an experiment. That's the whole thing. You're going into it, you're trying it, you're going to see what comes out the other side. And when I meet with parents in whatever the setting is, I ask them about creating a little experiment for the next week, something that they can try. I do the same thing in the office when kids are there as well. And I bring the whole family together to be able to figure out, well, what is the experiment that you would like to try together? And here's the very secret, AKA important ingredient. It's their experiment. It's not mine. We've already talked for however long before that about what's going on, what they're facing, the struggles, the things that are going well in their home, and what is important for them to focus on now. And so this is where you're going to see how I screwed it up. Okay. So let's talk about when I met with Jada a few weeks ago. And yes, names have been changed. I just really like the name Jada. I think it's very pretty. So, Jada is a 9-year-old girl who I met for a well visit in the office. And for those who don't know, I am a pediatrician. I work at a community health center, and it is back to school crush with physical time. Everybody is coming in to get their physicals done. And what I do at the beginning of every visit is I just take a peek at the growth curve. Now, this is the first time that I'd ever met her before. So I just had one point in time. I couldn't tell where she had been growing over time because she had seen a different pediatrician, a different office before. I noted that her growth was above the growth curves. Okay. So insert whatever number you want to put in there. Okay. For her weight, for her BMI. I just noticed that it was above that number, that upper line. And so I asked her family what concerns they had, what it was that they wanted to focus on for our visit, other than getting the paperwork for school. They're like, no, no issues whatsoever. And so, of course, what did I start with? Say it with me. You know what I started with? Sleep. Sleep comes first. Okay. I always ask about sleep. And that's for another episode, another time, but sleep comes first. So Jada went to bed around 9:30 in the evening every night, got up. It was like waking the dead at 6 a.m. in order to get ready for her family's morning commute and all the things that they had to do in the morning. On the weekends, it was actually quite different because Jada would sleep a good 11 hours and she would get up on her own and feel rested. And the family was also then bringing up that they were concerned about her weight and that they felt that she was going back to eat for second portions and these larger portions for dinner time. And it was interesting that when I asked her what it felt like in her body when she was hungry, she famously told me, and I love this one, it feels like more. So again, just introducing the language, getting to ask kids, like, what is it that it feels like in your body? Okay, let's just point out more is not a feeling. But that's, again, a story for another day. Okay, this is real life work with kids and real life in the pediatric office. So what we did was we did a little bit more evaluation and talking and exploring. And I asked the family what it is that they wanted to create for an experiment. And they opted to have a consistent one plate policy at mealtime. They said, this is something that we can do. It's easy for us. It's going to be one plate. Jada was on board with trying it. She said that she still would get to eat the foods that she wanted. She's willing to try. Hey, what's one plate look like? And then I asked if I could suggest an experiment. So, what about trying a bedtime that was just 30 minutes earlier, just a small step? And this was something that was coming from, being a pediatrician. I know that the suggested sleep amount per the CDC for a 9-year-old is somewhere in the range of about 9 to 12 hours per night. And when I did the math, I noticed she's getting about 8.5 hours, and she's exhausted during the week, but yet sleeping 11 hours on the weekend. Her body needs more sleep. Okay, the family agreed. So they returned this week. So I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks later. And they told me right away that they had mixed results. They're like, guess what, doc? That one plate experiment, it's working like a charm. And Jada said, I don't even miss it. And I'm like fascinating. I can't make this up. What 9-year-old says that? Like, there was a change that was made, and she's like, whatever, this is no big deal. This is apparently a 9-year-old who created an experiment along with her family, and it's working for her. But then mom was sharing that she was just really disappointed. The sleep experiment didn't work. She's like, we failed. We couldn't do it. So I was like, well, what's going on? Tell me about your experience. And mom said, we like to watch a TV show together every night. And Jada begs to stay and watch with me. And I just can't say no. I can't say no to her. And I really like the snuggles. Right there, it got clear as day for me. It was like, hold on. This is the information that I should have found out before. The routine of going to bed at 9:30, while maybe we could all argue like it's too late for this child, but this routine is working for the family. They had no interest in changing it, and it wasn't their experiment. They didn't fail the experiment. It wasn't theirs. It was my experiment. Man. So I noticed at that moment that the person in the room with them was this expert doctor. It was the version of me that thinks that I know what everyone else needs and what they should be doing for optimal health. And it's taken, I got to tell you, a whole lot of unlearning for me to recognize that this part of me exists. Of course it exists. That's what I was trained and taught to do in medicine, to be the expert, to know what other people should be doing, to tell them what they should be doing. And in a way, that's creating experiments for them, telling them you should be eating this way, moving this way, sleeping this way. The problem is that this expert doctor person is the one who messed up the whole experience with the family. And I'm actually the one that set them up for failure, because I gave them an experiment that we didn't even understand what was working for them in the first place. Tinkering with that wasn't going to help. Mom thought they were failing because this sleep experiment didn't work. And I recognized it in the moment. And I said, no, it wasn't the experiment that failed. It wasn't you that failed. I apologize because it was my issue, my failure. Okay. But what? Okay. I don't like the word failure. It was something where I had to learn that I made the wrong step here. I inserted myself. I offered them an experiment that was not going to fit their family. It was my issue because it was my experiment. So there was no motivation for the family to make a change. In fact, the mom describing that, there was this desire to not hear Jada, beg and fuss, as well as that association of that time as being family bonding. These are all red flags that I can look at now to know that there was no way that bedtime was going to change. And my job, okay, my role is to understand what's working for families, not to try to convince them of how it's not working for them. That's the surest way to get pushback. It's like trying to convince a teenager of how something isn't working for them. What do they tell you? They're going to tell you exactly how this conversation is not working for them. So I tell this story because I think it's everybody's story. How many times has someone asked you to change something and you agreed only to find that you, air quotes here, failed at it? You didn't fail. It just wasn't your plan to change. It wasn't your experiment. And, I think about how we have this come up a lot, with the example of smoking, like a family member asking someone who smokes to stop. And the thing is that the person who is smoking may not be considering stopping. They may not be, feeling that they can stop. And we can talk all about, I can never say it right. Prochaska, the stages of change. Okay. And they may be in like this pre-contemplation. I won't, I can't change. Or even contemplation where it's like, just not now. It's not a good time for this. And until we can really understand where people are, we can realize that our attempts to change them, that's what's going to fail. Because true change happens from the inside out. And that means that motivation, the possibility, seeing that a change is possible, that it fits for me, that it's going to work, the possibility of it working, and the possibility of it being something that I want to experiment with in my life. There are some things you're like, yeah, whatever, that doesn't fit for me. And that's okay. So I share because I think that these are truly the learning moments. I screwed up. My best lessons, okay, we can go back to another episode. I'm not sure which one it was, but about imperfection and how the things that I learned the most, like they are like hardwired in my brain now, are the ones I screwed up. So I thanked Jada and her family. And I said, this has been a great opportunity for me to learn how to be a better doctor, how to be a better connector and listener and understander and helper. So I'd love to hear what's coming up for you. What examples do you have? How have you seen an experiment, a little tiny experiment that worked well for you? What were the ingredients to that whole thing working well? What's an experiment? Maybe something that you tried, you're like, yeah, that fell flat. Well, why? What happened? As always, you can drop me a line. So Wendy at wendyschofermd.com. You can check the spelling down in the notes. And I will see you again very soon. Much love.